The year is 1665. Isaac Newton is a young man of 23. He's sitting in his room. He's bored. Suddenly a question crosses his mind, out of nowhere. What is color? Where are colors? Do they exist in nature? Or are they just inside my head? Who thinks of something like that out of the blue? People wonder. But that's exactly what sets people like Isaac Newton apart from everyone else. The question pops into his head, and it doesn't let go. He immediately goes and finds himself a glass prism. Of course, there were no gift shops back then. You can imagine how hard that must have been. He runs back to his room. He closes all the curtains. He cuts a small hole in the curtain facing the sun, and he waits, and waits, and waits, and waits. He waits for the sun to hit exactly the right angle. And then at one point, sunlight comes through and strikes the prism. What happens next feels like magic. The prism bends the sunlight, and a rainbow appears on the wall. The white light entering the prism refracts, and a colorful image of the sun suddenly appears on the dark wall of his room. And of course, the questions never stop coming. Wasn't sunlight supposed to be white? Or was it the prism creating this rainbow? Where did these colors come from? He needed to be sure, so he runs off and finds himself a second glass prism. Finding two glass prisms at once, back then? Now that's what I call determination and persistence. He takes that second prism and places it in front of the blue light coming out of the first prism. Let's see what comes out. When the blue light bends again, he thinks. The result? Blue. Blue light reflects onto the wall again. So there's nothing special about the prism itself, young Newton concludes. All the colors, it turns out, were hidden inside white light all along. The colors were in the white light, the colors were white light itself. And light, as we call it, is ultimately something that physically exists. We can test it, bend it, reflect it, play with it. We could say this discovery was the beginning of everything we know about light today. Ultraviolet rays, X-rays, radio waves, they're all just different energies of light, and colors are simply the different energy levels found within the narrow range we're able to see. Thanks to this, we can calculate the greenhouse effect, what stars are made of, even the age of the universe, and we can photograph a black hole millions of light years away. Science, logic, isn't that a beautiful thing? Isn't that Of course, there was a group of people that science bothered quite a bit back then, as always. The Romantics. The poet John Keats was one of them. In one of his poems, he got furious at Newton, complaining that he had destroyed the poetry of the rainbow. But that's just how science works. It doesn't care about romance. But romanticism has a stubborn side, too. One of today's German poets, Jonah Lehrer, is out on a walk in the park one day. His eyes catch some yellow crocuses. How beautiful, he thinks. A moment later, he turns his head and looks back, and he can't believe his eyes. The yellow crocuses have suddenly turned purple. He looks again, and again, and again. No, the crocuses really are purple now. This is actually something all of us experience from time to time. You probably remember that famous dress or those shoes that split the entire world's opinion in two. And that raises another question. Yes, colors are hidden inside white light, but ultimately it's our brain that interprets them. The final stop is our brain's perception system, and that's still an open question. Science can tell us that colors are an unchanging fact, but the colors we see might also be tricks played by our imagination. So I want to explore this topic of colors through a story caught between scientific facts and the games our brains play. Let's look through the eyes of a butterfly. Let's talk about some truly bizarre creatures that make us look primitive by comparison, and why color perception differs between men and women. And maybe even a possible cure for color blindness. Once we put it all together, the answer to why can't we imagine a new color will reveal itself on its own. Here's the real question. Yes, we know the colors perceived by a person with normal vision, but does a dog or a cat see those same colors the same way we do? In other words, is the red we see also red to other creatures, even to an alien? The answer is neither a clear yes nor a clear no. The best we can say is almost the same. Take dogs, for example. There's a common misconception that dogs can only see in black and white. That's not true. Dogs can see black, white, blue, and green. So the world seen by a colorblind person and the world seen by a dog are actually quite similar. And by the way, we know that about 10% of men are colorblind. Why men specifically? I'll get to that shortly. At this point, let's walk through a rainbow. A person with normal vision and a dog will see very different things when they look at a rainbow. The rainbow as we see it, from bottom to top, contains these colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. From a dog's eyes, the order looks like this: green, a grayish color in between, and blue. That's it. Dogs see a rainbow that's roughly half as wide as what we see. So why is that? Inside the eye, there are photoreceptors responsible for perceiving color. These are also called color cones. We have 3 of these cones: red, blue, and green. Dogs have 2, blue and green. Dogs don't have red photoreceptors at all. That's why red balls don't really catch a dog's interest. To them, red just looks like a shade of gray. So the entire difference comes down to a single color cone. Can just one cone really make that much difference? Yes. If you think about how intermediate colors come from mixing primary colors, adding red to green and blue lets you produce hundreds of other intermediate colors. For example, mixing red and blue gives you purple. That's why dogs can't see purple either. Now let's look at another animal. Sparrows, for instance. You may already know this, sparrows can see purple and beyond. So when a sparrow looks at a rainbow, the one that ends at purple for us, it has a few more colors on top for them. Sparrows are looking at a thicker, more spectacular rainbow. Pretty lucky, right? Among vertebrates, yes, they're one of the luckiest. But once we move to invertebrates, sparrows don't even make the list. Take butterflies, for example. Remember, we have 3 photoreceptors. With 3 cones, we can see all the colors of the rainbow, all the colors that exist in nature. Do you know how many butterflies have? A full 6. That means they can see both infrared and ultraviolet. They can even see beyond that, but we only know about infrared and ultraviolet ourselves. Anything past those colors is simply beyond for us. We have no idea what's out there. Butterflies are looking at an incredibly thick, massive rainbow. It really is a visual feast. So we might think butterflies are the champions of vision. Nope, not quite. Let's head to the coral reefs. Here lives a creature known as the mantis shrimp. Don't let the word shrimp fool you. These are pretty large creatures. Beautiful animals with neon colors. With those huge eyes, you could even call them cute. But behind those eyes lies an absolutely bizarre system. Let's recap. Dogs have 2 color cones. Humans have 3. Sparrows and butterflies have 5 to 6. Adding just one more cone let us perceive hundreds of additional colors. So how many do you think this shrimp has? A full 16. That's more than double any living species we know of. No known species has a visual system even half as complex as this shrimp's. Just imagine this shrimp looking at a rainbow. Crimson, purple, green, blue, red, yellow. And think of the beyond of every single one of those colors. A true explosion of color. A fireworks show made entirely of colors. But we can't really say these animals enjoy any of it. Maybe because their brains are a bit small, these creatures tend to be extremely aggressive. And not just a little, they actually have the strongest punch of any animal on Earth. With a single strike, they can shatter a thick aquarium glass. Their punches reach speeds of up to 85 kilometers per hour, delivering force nearly equivalent to a .22 caliber bullet. Tiny Muhammad Alis with incredible vision are roaming the oceans, so watch out. Now let's move on to a truly strange study. A study conducted on colorblind monkeys. Researchers recently ran an experiment on monkeys missing the red color cone. They took the genes responsible for the red cone from humans and injected them into the monkey's eyes. Guess what happened? The monkeys instantly started seeing red. But unfortunately, it didn't last. To check whether the effect was permanent, every morning the monkeys were shown a red dot on a completely gray background on a screen. Any monkey that touched the dot got a reward of juice. Unfortunately, the monkeys being tested lost this ability just one day after the injection. The next day, the same thing. The day after, the same. Days went by with no change. Every morning brought another failure, another disappointment. Sad monkeys unable to get their juice. Until week 20. In the 20th week, the monkeys were taken from their cages and tested again. And they found the red dot. They could see red now. They weren't colorblind anymore. The next day, the same result. And the day after that too. The monkeys now had this cone for good. The treatment worked. And most importantly, they could finally drink their juice again. This actually suggests that color blindness could potentially be cured, and that the same result could be achieved in humans as well. In fact, this is purely theoretical, but we could even imagine injecting ultraviolet or infrared cones into someone with normal vision. However, the US Food and Drug Administration hasn't approved this kind of treatment yet. They're not convinced just yet. We'll have to wait and see. Now remember at the very beginning I mentioned that 10% of men are colorblind? Let's take a look at why. This isn't a coincidence. And maybe this is also the reason why, when a wife says, "Honey, I can't find my fuchsia blouse," the husband replies, "What's fuchsia?" And then, once she shows him, says, "Isn't that just purple?" The photoreceptors I mentioned earlier, the color cones, are located on the X chromosome. As you know, men have one X chromosome, while women have two. That means women have two copies of the genes that produce color cones, and under normal conditions, only one of them is active, which gives them normal color vision. But at this point, a pretty logical question comes to mind. Couldn't that unused second gene also become active? Couldn't it kick in? And couldn't it give women an even stronger color perception? The answer, yes. Theoretically, yes. So for instance, if that unused gene underwent some kind of transformation and formed a fourth color cone, and let's say that turned out to be a yellow cone, then combined with the other colors, you could end up with hundreds, even thousands, of additional shades. In fact, the presence of these color cones can actually be confirmed through DNA testing. And one scientist began running these tests somewhat randomly, and found a woman who proved this exact theory. She discovered a woman with a fourth color cone, a tetrachromat. What is a tetrachromat? Most people are what's called trichromats, meaning they have 3 cones. Tetrachromats have 4. Want to try a quick test right now? I'm going to show you a color chart. Pause the video and count how many colors you see. If you counted more than 39 colors, there's a chance you might be a tetrachromat too. A trichromat can perceive around 1 million shades of color, while a tetrachromat can perceive up to 10 million. And the reason is exactly this extra color cone we've been talking about. Does that 16-cone shrimp suddenly seem even more incredible now? But if you happen to be a tetrachromat, life might not actually feel that different. Why? Because you're living in a world designed by people like me, trichromats. Even the colors used in this very video are within the range of colors I can perceive. Traffic lights, magazines, books, paintings, the vast majority of them are created by trichromats. In other words, we use the colors we know. We simply don't know the colors that you can see. And that's exactly why we don't produce them either. Sorry about that. But remember that woman I mentioned earlier, the tetrachromat? Curious what she does for a living? She's an interior designer, and the vast majority of tetrachromats end up working in creative fields like design and art. They create designs that fascinate the rest of us. They bring colors we don't even know exist into our colorless world. Maybe we can't see most of them, but they teach us about shades we can technically see, yet never think to notice. So it's worth saying thank you to them. Anyway, most people have to make do with just 3 colors. That's why every colorful show, series, and movie you see on TV is made up of just 3 colors. You know it as RGB, red, green, blue. Those are the colors of the 3 cones in our eyes. Every color we see is a mixture of these 3. Everything tetrachromats and mantis shrimp see is simply beyond for most of us. Our limits are clear, just as there's a maximum height we can jump, a maximum speed we can run, a maximum number of watermelons we can carry with 2 hands, there's also a limit to the number of colors we can see. And the same goes for the number of colors we can even imagine. That's also why we struggle to make sense of quantum physics or black holes. We know that all the rules of physics break down at the atomic level, but we don't know exactly how or what kind of shift we're even talking about. There's so much we can't fully make sense of. And the reason, as I mentioned, comes down to physical limits. But people like Newton push those limits and turn things that seem meaningless to us into something meaningful. So really, where those limits begin and end depends partly on where we choose to draw the line ourselves. Maybe we can't see a new color or imagine one. But here's the real question. Have we truly seen every color we're capable of seeing? Have we tried to experience every color available to us? Maybe one day that experiment I mentioned will get approved, and we too could get a shot to expand our color spectrum. But until that day comes, we can at least try to see more color than we already do. Life is almost always so much bigger than what we're able to see. Never stop trying new things, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. Take care.